Right now, as you watch this video, the price of fish at your supermarket is climbing in a way that has no ceiling. Not because the oceans ran out of fish, not because of a drought or a plague or some natural disaster, because of a spreadsheet, because of a tariff, because of a trade war being fought in a room you were never invited into, over food you had no say in, by people who will never miss a meal regardless of the outcome. Here's the number that should make your stomach drop. 94% of the seafood consumed in the United States is imported. 94%. That means almost every piece of fish you put in your body traveled across an ocean, passed through a government inspection, survived a supply chain that spans 5 time zones, and arrived at your store already bearing the invisible tax of every political decision made along the way. Fish and seafood prices are already up nearly 4% in the first quarter of 2026 alone, more than 3 times the overall inflation rate. The USDA expects that pace to accelerate for the rest of the year, and prices for fresh fish and seafood are 133% higher today than they were in 1997. That is not a blip. That is a structural, permanent, multi-decade trend, and it is not stopping. But here's what nobody in that trade war room wants you to understand. You can opt out entirely. Not by shopping at a different store, not by buying canned tuna from a different brand, but by building a living protein system in your own backyard that operates completely outside the global seafood supply chain. A system that produces more fish per square foot than you think possible, using water that has been cycling through your yard since the day you dug the hole. A system that tariffs cannot touch. A system that does not care who is president, which port is backed up, or what the price of tilapia is at Kroger this week. This is the backyard fish pond. And today I'm going to show you how to build one that will feed you fresh protein for the next decade. Before I show you how to build it, you need to understand why most people who try this fail. Because they do, and they fail in the same 3 ways, every single time. And if you walk into this system making any one of those mistakes, you will join them. The first mistake is species selection. People pick the wrong fish for their climate, their system size, or their skill level. They try to raise trout in warm water or salmon in a plastic tub, and they spend an entire season watching expensive fish die one by one from stress they never understood. Species selection is not a preference. It is a law of biology, and it must match your climate and your system design precisely. The second mistake is system design. They dig a shallow, shapeless hole, fill it with water, drop fingerlings in, and call it a pond. Within 90 days, it is a green, oxygen-depleted soup that cannot support life at any density worth talking about. A productive fish pond is not a hole with water in it. It is an engineered ecosystem with specific depth zones, oxygenation, filtration, and a stocking plan designed around the carrying capacity of the water volume. Every one of those variables matters. The third mistake, and this is the one that quietly kills the most systems, is thinking like a gardener instead of thinking like an architect. People focus on what they can see above the waterline and completely ignore the invisible biological system underneath it. The nitrogen cycle, the bacterial colonies, the dissolved oxygen levels. These are the invisible machinery that either makes your pond a productive protein factory or a stagnant disaster. You do not need a chemistry degree to manage them. You need to understand them well enough to build the system correctly from the beginning. Get those 3 things right, and a backyard pond is one of the most efficient food production systems a family can own. Get them wrong, and it is an expensive hole in your lawn. Now let me show you what getting it right actually looks like. Just as a food forest operates in vertical layers, canopy, understory, ground cover, a productive backyard fish pond operates in layers of species, each occupying a different ecological role, each producing food and each supporting the others. This is polyculture, and it is how human beings have raised fish in ponds for thousands of years in China, Hawaii, and across Southeast Asia. It is not new. It is not experimental. It is simply overlooked. The system is built around 3 species, chosen for a specific reason. Together, they are almost impossibly hard to kill. They convert feed into body mass with remarkable efficiency. and they complement each other's ecological roles in a way that makes the whole pond more stable than any single species system ever could be. The first species is tilapia. Tilapia are the engine of this system. If you keep the water warm and a feeding schedule consistent, a tilapia fingerling can reach harvestable plate size in as little as 6 to 8 months. That speed is the reason tilapia are the most farmed fish on the planet. In a home pond, you want all-male tilapia. Males grow faster than females and do not divert energy into egg production. They are hardy enough to survive the kind of water quality variability that kills more sensitive species, and they are efficient enough at converting feed to flesh that you will be shocked by how quickly a small pond generates real harvest weight. Tilapia do have one important requirement. They need warm water, ideally above 60 degrees Fahrenheit to thrive and above 50 degrees to survive. In warmer climate zones, this is a non-issue. In temperate zones, you will need to either bring them inside during winter months or accept that they are a seasonal producer. Your climate determines how you manage them. It does not determine whether they work. The second species is channel catfish. Channel catfish are the most forgiving fish you can raise in a backyard pond. They tolerate temperature swings that would stress tilapia. They tolerate lower oxygen levels. They tolerate a wider range of water chemistry, and they grow large. A channel catfish can reach 2 to 3 pounds in 12 months in a well-managed outdoor system. In colder climates, growth is slower, but catfish survive winters that would be fatal to tilapia, making them the backbone of a year-round protein system in temperate zones. Catfish are bottom feeders by nature, which makes them the cleanup crew of your pond. They occupy the lower water column, vacuuming up uneaten feed and organic debris that would otherwise decompose, consume oxygen, and destabilize your water quality. In polyculture, catfish and tilapia make an almost perfectly complementary pair. One works the surface, one works the bottom, and between them they use the full depth of the water column without competing. The third species is bluegill, and this is the one nobody talks about. That is a mistake. Bluegill are native to North America. They will survive a cold winter night that would kill a tank of tilapia in hours. They reproduce readily, which means that with the right management, your bluegill population becomes partially self-sustaining, reducing the need to buy fingerlings year after year. They reach 6 to 12 inches in 12 to 18 months. They have a mild, clean-tasting flesh, and they are completely adapted to the natural temperature swings of a backyard pond in any temperate climate. When tilapia have been brought in for the winter and catfish slow their growth in cold water, bluegill continue feeding and slowly converting food to protein. They are the year-round insurance policy in your pond. 3 species, 3 ecological roles, one system that is productive in every season and resilient enough to absorb the inevitable mistakes you will make as you learn to manage it. Now, let's build it. Everything begins with the pond itself, and the pond must be done right. A productive backyard fish pond for a family of 4 should hold a minimum of 1,000 gallons of water. In practice, this means a pond roughly 10 feet by 8 feet with an average depth of 3 feet, achievable in a standard suburban backyard in a single weekend of digging. Depth is not optional. Shallow ponds superheat in summer and freeze in winter. They stratify into oxygen-poor dead zones at the bottom. They cannot support the stocking densities that make this system worth building. Your pond must reach a minimum of 3 feet at its deepest point, with a shelf zone of 1 to 2 feet around the perimeter where aquatic plants can take root. Choose your site deliberately. You want partial shade because full sun all day accelerates algae growth beyond what the system can manage. You want access to electricity for your pump and aerator. And you want level ground, so you are not building the pond at the lowest point in your yard, which becomes a collection point for runoff and debris every time it rains. Dig the hole. Remove every sharp rock and root you find. This step matters because the next thing you are going to do is line it with rubber, and anything sharp underneath will eventually work its way through. Use a 45 mil EPDM rubber pond liner, not PVC. PVC is cheap and it is not reliably fish safe, and it will degrade under UV exposure faster than you want. EPDM rubber is fish-safe, UV-resistant, flexible enough to conform to any shape, and capable of lasting 20 to 50 years with proper installation. Before you lay the liner, install a geotextile underlayment to protect it from any sharp edges you missed during excavation. Once the liner is in, fold it carefully around the edges, secure it with heavy stones or landscape edging, and fill it slowly while smoothing the folds as the weight of the water sets the liner into place. The total cost of the excavated lined pond, before filtration, runs between $200 and $400 doing the work yourself. That is your foundation. Now, here is where most beginners make the mistake that kills their fish before they ever get started. A pond is not just water. It is a living biological system, and before you put a single fish into it, you need that system to be running. The nitrogen cycle is the process by which beneficial bacteria convert fish waste, specifically ammonia, first into nitrite and then into the far less harmful nitrate. Without established bacterial colonies to drive this process, ammonia builds up in the water and kills fish within days. Beginners dig the hole, fill it with water, buy fingerlings the same week, add them to uncycled water, and then cannot understand why their fish are dead before the first month is out. This is the invisible mistake that destroys more backyard fish systems than any other single error. Cycling a pond takes 3 to 6 weeks. You can accelerate it by adding a commercial bacterial starter culture from any pond supply store, by introducing a small amount of fish food to create an ammonia source for the bacteria to work on, and by running your pump and aerator continuously to oxygenate the water and keep the bacterial colonies active. Speaking of aeration, it is non-negotiable. Fish consume dissolved oxygen. Beneficial bacteria consume dissolved oxygen. On a hot summer day, a pond with inadequate aeration will see oxygen levels crash and fish will die at the surface. A submersible pump rated for 400 to 800 gallons per hour, combined with an airstone aerator, both available together for $50 to $100, will maintain adequate circulation and oxygen in a 1,000-gallon pond. Run them continuously. The electricity cost is minimal. The consequence of turning them off is not. Test your water weekly for the first 3 months using an inexpensive freshwater test kit. You are watching for ammonia and nitrite to spike and then fall back to zero as the bacterial colonies establish themselves. When both hold at zero for 2 consecutive weeks, your pond is cycled. Now you are ready for fish. Stocking follows the same successional logic as planting a food forest. You do not introduce everything at once. You introduce each species at the moment the system is ready to support it. In the first week of stocking, introduce your bluegill first. Start with 20 to 30 fingerlings in a 1,000-gallon pond. Bluegill are the hardiest of your 3 species and will complete the biological conditioning of the water for the more demanding fish that follow. They will also begin feeding immediately, helping establish the feeding rhythms of the system. 4 weeks later, add 15 to 20 channel catfish fingerlings. By now, your ammonia and nitrite should be cycling efficiently, and the catfish will slot into the lower water column without disrupting the balance. Feed a high-protein pellet, 32% protein content minimum, twice daily, offering only what the fish will consume in 5 to 10 minutes. Uneaten feed rots, consumes oxygen, and destabilizes your water chemistry. Feed discipline is one of the most important habits in pond management. 4 to 6 weeks after that, if your water temperature is consistently above 65 degrees, add 10 to 15 all-male tilapia fingerlings. Tilapia are your sprinters. They will grow fastest and harvest soonest, and by staggering their introduction, you ensure the biological system can absorb their waste load without crashing. You are now running a functional 3-species polyculture system. A 1,000-gallon pond stocked at these densities, managed with consistent feeding and weekly water quality monitoring, can produce 50 to 80 pounds of fish per year. At current retail prices, with tilapia, catfish, and bluegill all sitting above $6 to $10 per pound at most markets, that represents $300 to $700 worth of fresh protein annually from a system that cost you less than $500 to build. One of the quiet victories of this system is that it produces continuously rather than in a single annual event. Tilapia are typically ready to harvest at 6 to 8 months when they reach 1 to 1.5 pounds. Catfish reach 2 to 3 pounds in 12 months in warm climates. Bluegill are harvestable at 12 to 18 months. Rather than netting the entire pond at once, remove individuals as they reach target weight. A simple seine net works for tilapia and catfish. For bluegill, a hook and line is completely effective and frankly more satisfying. Every fish you remove creates space in the carrying capacity of the pond for new fingerlings, and the cycle continues. By year 2, your bluegill population may begin reproducing naturally in the pond. If you manage the numbers carefully, removing adults regularly to prevent overpopulation, you can dramatically reduce or eliminate the need to purchase bluegill fingerlings going forward. A partially self-sustaining population is the long game, and bluegill make it achievable in a way that tilapia and catfish do not. Here is where the system earns an additional dimension of return that pure fish farming cannot match. The water in your fish pond is not just water. It is a nutrient-rich biological solution loaded with nitrogen in the form of nitrate, the same compound that commercial plant fertilizers are built on. Every gallon of water you cycle out of your pond and irrigate into a garden bed is a gallon of liquid fertilizer produced for free by your fish as a byproduct of their existence. Position your pond uphill or adjacent to a garden bed. Drain water from the pond onto the bed during your weekly water change, which should replace roughly 10 to 20% of pond volume each week. Your vegetables, herbs, and fruit plants will grow faster and produce more than they would with any store-bought fertilizer. The pond feeds the garden, and if you set up a simple return flow, the garden's root system helps filter the water that flows back to the fish. This is aquaponics in its most accessible low-tech form. No expensive grow beds, no complex plumbing, just a pond, a garden, and gravity doing what it has always done. Now, let me address the question I know some of you are already asking. What if I live somewhere cold? Backyard fish farming is not a tropical luxury. The 3 species in this system are specifically chosen because together they cover the full range of climates in which most people live. In warmer southern zones, all 3 species thrive outdoors year-round, and tilapia can produce multiple harvests in a single year. In temperate zones, tilapia require either indoor overwintering or a seasonal rotation strategy, while catfish and bluegill manage the winter outdoors on their own. In colder northern zones, tilapia become a warm season crop, brought in before the first frost and replaced with fingerlings each spring, while catfish and bluegill carry the system through winter. If the pond is deep enough, at least 3 feet, it will not freeze solid, and your cold-tolerant species will slow their metabolism, feed sparingly, and survive until spring. Your climate is not an obstacle. It is a design parameter. Every zone has a version of this system that works. Do not let where you live be the reason you do not build it. Now, let us talk about what this investment actually means in real numbers. The materials to build the pond, liner, underlayment, pump, aerator, water test kit, run between $300 and $500. Your initial fingerlings from a reputable hatchery cost between $50 and $100. Feed for year 1 runs another $100 to $150. Your total first-year investment is somewhere in the range of $450 to $750, depending on what you already own and how much you recycle and repurpose. From year 2 forward, your ongoing annual costs are primarily fish feed and replacement fingerlings, $150 to $250 per year. Everything else, the pond, the liner, the pump, is already paid for. Against that, a conservatively managed 1,000-gallon pond produces 50 to 80 pounds of fish annually. At today's retail prices, that is $350 to $600 worth of protein per year. At the prices expected in 5 years, accounting for historical trends and the accelerating pressure of tariffs on the 94% of seafood that crosses an international border before it reaches your table, that number climbs significantly higher. Over 10 years, you are looking at $4,000 to $8,000 worth of clean home-raised protein from a system that cost you less than $500 to build. But the return this system delivers cannot be fully captured in dollars. It is the Tuesday night dinner where the fish on the plate came out of your backyard that morning. It is the knowledge that no trade war, no shipping disruption, no tariff announcement, and no supply chain collapse touches your protein supply. It is the pond that your children will learn to tend, that will teach them where food actually comes from, and that will still be producing clean protein when they are adults. It is the feeling of standing next to a living system you built with your own hands and watching it work, quietly, continuously, independently of every decision being made in rooms you were never invited into. That is a kind of food security that no supermarket can sell you. The instinct, when you hear a system like this, is to wait, to do more research, to watch more videos, to make sure the timing is right. That instinct is the enemy of this project. Every week you wait, you are paying the market price for protein that was shipped, frozen, tariffed, refrigerated, and marked up through a supply chain that has no loyalty to your budget and no interest in your food security. Every week you wait is a week of fish you will not be harvesting from a pond you have not yet built. A pond dug this spring will be cycled and stocked by summer. It will be harvesting by fall. By this time next year, you will have pulled real protein from a system you own, managed, and built yourself. A system that no politician, no tariff, and no trade war can tax. The pond does not care about the news. Build it before the next announcement.